Hey Spurs fans, welcome back to another update on our San Antonio Spurs. Before we jump into today's breaking news, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And here's something special for you. Everyone who subscribes and leaves a comment with their name and the city they're watching for will automatically be entered into our giveaway to win an official San Antonio Spurs jersey. So don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment your name and city below. Stay tuned, because the next Spurs fan wearing the jersey could be you. Few moments in sports carry as much symbolic weight as the instant when a prolonged wait finally comes to an end. And that was precisely what materialized in Las Vegas when the New York franchise turned anticipation into reality by overcoming San Antonio in a championship clash that transcended the scoreboard and etched itself into the league's collective memory. This was not merely a triumph in a newly established competition, but the definitive conclusion of more than half a century marked by quiet frustration, unfinished nights, and promises repeatedly postponed. The final score showed an 11-point margin, yet the true supremacy of the Knicks was forged long before the final buzzer sounded. Built through emotional maturity, strategic control, and flawless execution at the precise moments when historic games are often lost. Every possession functioned as a declaration of intent, every offensive sequence as a statement that the past would no longer dictate the present of the organization. At the heart of this narrative stood Jalen Brunson, whose performance extended far beyond statistical production and emerged as a clear symbol of leadership. At 29 years of age, the point guard assumed command with remarkable composure, recording 25 points while delivering decisive passes that dismantled any attempt at defensive stability. Even without elite shooting efficiency, his game awareness and willingness to shoulder responsibility during critical stretches proved decisive in shaping the outcome of the final, ultimately earning him the most prestigious individual recognition of the night. The collective strength of the roster also manifested itself in striking fashion. OG Anunoby was relentless, converting opportunities into consistent scoring, finishing with 28 points and establishing himself as the primary offensive weapon. His presence on the floor embodied sustained intensity, calculated aggression, and precision when the threat of equilibrium began to surface. Inside the paint, the impact was even more emphatic. Mitchell Robinson, entering from the bench, imposed absolute physical dominance, securing 15 rebounds, 10 of them on the offensive end, systematically dismantling San Antonio's attempts to control the interior. Alongside him, Karl-Anthony Towns reinforced the advantage with a composed and efficient display, posting a double-figure performance by combining 16 points with 11 rebounds, offering a rare blend of strength and technical versatility. This achievement represents far more than a recently created trophy. It signals an institutional turning point, a clear indication that the sporting vision guided by Mike Brown has finally found identity, purpose, and collective commitment. After decades without celebrating an official title since the league championship captured in 1973, the franchise once again lifted silverware with competitive legitimacy. The head coach did not shy away from the magnitude of the moment, emphasizing that opportunities to immortalize a team within Madison Square Garden are exceedingly rare, and when they arise, they demand absolute devotion. That philosophy resonated on the court from the opening tip to the final possession, transforming the tournament into something far greater than a mid-season event. Beyond symbolic recognition and the financial rewards allocated to players and staff, the psychological impact of the victory projects immediate consequences for the remainder of the campaign. The group now carries renewed confidence, validating its ambitions within the Eastern Conference and sending an unmistakable message to rivals. The Knicks are no longer merely dreaming again. They now understand precisely how to win. That night in Las Vegas was not an isolated chapter, but a definitive turning point. And for a fan base that waited patiently for 52 years, the sound of triumph finally echoed loudly enough to silence the weight of the past. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Your support keeps our Spurs coverage strong and brings you the latest updates straight from San Antonio. And jump into the comments. Tell us what you think about today's news. The first sign that something deeper was unfolding did not come through an official statement or a carefully timed press release, but through a brief, defiant message that echoed louder than expected across league circles. A message from Keldon Johnson that carried the weight of uncertainty, ambition, and challenge, instantly igniting speculation about his future and drawing intense focus toward the San Antonio Spurs, a franchise that rarely finds itself at the center of public drama unless a calculated shift is underway. Johnson's words, measured yet unmistakably provocative, landed at a moment when the Spurs are quietly redefining their trajectory, and the timing alone was enough to send analysts scrambling for context. Because when a player long associated with internal growth and organizational loyalty begins to speak in tones of resolve rather than reassurance, it often signals that conversations behind closed doors have reached a critical stage. Within San Antonio, the reaction was not panic but attention, a sharpened awareness that Keldon Johnson's message was not an emotional outburst, but a deliberate signal, one that reflects both his confidence in his own value and his awareness of the franchise's evolving direction. The Spurs' interest in Johnson has never been casual or symbolic, because he represents far more than a rotation player, embodying years of development, adaptability, and cultural alignment, and his voice now carries added significance as the organization balances patience with urgency. League insiders describe the Spurs' stance as deeply engaged rather than reactive, emphasizing that Johnson's message has intensified internal evaluations rather than disrupted them, reinforcing the belief that his future is a central piece of the broader puzzle rather than a peripheral concern. Keldon Johnson's journey in San Antonio has been defined by steady progression, resilience through transition, and a willingness to embrace responsibility, qualities that resonate strongly within a franchise built on continuity and trust, making his recent remarks all the more compelling. The intrigue surrounding his statement stems from its ambiguity, because it neither confirmed departure nor pledged permanence, instead challenging assumptions and forcing observers to reconsider where Johnson fits within the Spurs' long-term vision. For San Antonio, this moment represents a crossroads not of conflict but of clarity, an opportunity to reaffirm values while acknowledging that the NBA is an ecosystem where ambition must be addressed directly, not quietly deferred. The Spurs' strong interest in Johnson is rooted in his versatility, physicality, and emotional edge, traits that become increasingly valuable as the organization shifts from developmental patience toward competitive assertion. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is how closely Johnson's personal evolution mirrors the Spurs' own transformation, both moving from foundational rebuilding toward a desire for relevance that extends beyond potential. Sources suggest that the Spurs view Johnson not merely as a scorer or wing presence, but as a tone setter whose energy influences locker room dynamics, practice intensity, and on-court accountability. His message, interpreted by some as defiant, has instead been understood internally as declarative, a reminder that players who invest years into an organization expect reciprocal belief when the stakes rise. Around the league, rival teams are monitoring the situation closely, aware that uncertainty often creates opportunity, yet also mindful that San Antonio has a long history of retaining players by aligning purpose rather than escalating noise. The Spurs' interest remains firm because Johnson's profile aligns with the type of competitor they value, someone willing to challenge himself, the system, and expectations without fracturing collective identity. Analysts have noted that Johnson's confidence has grown alongside his responsibilities, and his recent words reflect a player who sees himself as more than a complementary piece, but as an essential contributor to winning basketball. For the Spurs front office, this is not a moment of pressure, but of leverage, an opening to articulate vision, role, and trajectory with precision, reinforcing why San Antonio remains a destination for those who value structure over spectacle. The message also underscores a broader truth about the modern NBA, where silence is often louder than statements, and statements, when chosen carefully, can redefine narratives overnight. Johnson's challenge resonates because it taps into a universal tension between patience and ambition, especially for players entering the prime of their careers within teams still shaping their competitive identity. The Spurs' response has been measured, reinforcing the belief that meaningful decisions are not rushed but refined through dialogue, trust, and strategic alignment. Within the locker room, Johnson's stance has reportedly sparked reflection rather than division, prompting conversations about leadership, responsibility, and the collective path forward. From a basketball perspective, the Spurs' interest is justified by Johnson's adaptability, his ability to impact games without dominating the ball, and his willingness to embrace physically demanding roles. The timing of the message coincides with a period of organizational evaluation, where San Antonio is assessing which pieces will define its next competitive chapter, making Johnson's voice impossible to ignore. For fans, the situation introduces both tension and anticipation, because uncertainty invites imagination, and imagination fuels belief in what the Spurs could become if alignment is achieved. The league's broader reaction reflects respect rather than alarm, recognizing that this is not a fracture, but a negotiation of identity between player and franchise. The Spurs' strong interest in Johnson signals their intention to keep him central to future plans, not as a passive asset, but as an active participant in shaping direction. His message has effectively reframed the conversation, shifting it from speculation about departure to examination of purpose, value, and commitment. In San Antonio, commitment has always been earned through consistency rather than declarations. Yet Johnson's willingness to speak has added urgency to mutual understanding. This moment may ultimately be remembered not for the tension it introduced, but for the clarity it demanded, forcing all sides to articulate expectations honestly. As the season approaches and narratives solidify, Johnson's future remains open, but firmly anchored in dialogue rather than distance. The Spurs' interest continues to be strong, deliberate, and grounded in long-term vision, reflecting confidence rather than fear. In an NBA landscape driven by immediacy, this unfolding story stands out for its depth, its patience, and its refusal to conform to predictable arcs. Keldon Johnson's message was not an ending, but an invitation to define the next phase for himself and for the franchise that has shaped his rise. And as the league watches closely, one truth becomes increasingly evident. When San Antonio listens, it does so with intent, and when it commits, it does so with purpose, ensuring that this moment will resonate far beyond a single statement about the future. That's it for today's update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of every exclusive San Antonio Spurs news drop, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And don't forget, your opinion matters to Spurs Nation. Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.